Good evening, everyone. The hour being 7 p.m. on January 11th, 2021. I'd like to call to order the City Council meeting for the City of Laconia. Prior to beginning the meeting, I'd like to read the introduction for electronic meetings. I appreciate your forbearance. As Mayor of the Laconia City Council, due to the COVID-19 coronavirus crisis and in accordance with Governor Sununu's Emergency Order Number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this board is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen to the meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the Governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, this is to confirm that we are A, providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. This evening, we are utilizing the Zoom platform for this electronic meeting. All members have the ability to communicate during this meeting through the Zoom platform, and the public has access to watch the live YouTube video at www.youtube.com/LaconiaNH. Listen to the meeting through dialing the following phone number, 1-301-715-8592, or participate by the Zoom app, webinar ID 842-1822-6469, password 152191. B, providing public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of how to access the meeting using Zoom, and instructions are provided on the City of Laconia's website at www.laconianh.gov. C, providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anybody has a problem, please call 527-1265, extension 243, or email at cityclerk@laconianh.gov. And D, adjourning the meeting if the public is unable to access the meeting. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting, we will adjourn the meeting and have it rescheduled at that time. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. So let's start the meeting by taking roll call attendance. When each member states his presence, also please state whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. I'd ask the City Clerk, Cheryl Hebert, to call the roll.
Councillor Cheney.
Present and alone.
Councillor Susie.
Present and alone.
Councillor Littman.
Present and I'm alone.
Councillor Haynes.
Present and alone.
Councillor Hamel.
Present and alone.
Councillor Felch.
Here and alone.
Mayor Hosmer.
I am present and alone. Thank you. Before we go any farther, I would like to call upon Councillor Felch to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councillor Felch.
You're welcome.
Again, joining us this evening is City Clerk Cheryl Hebert, City Manager Scott Myers, and City Finance Director Glenn Smith, who is also helping us with the IT. Moving right along to number 7 on our agenda, which would be the acceptance of minutes from previous meetings. The meetings of our December 28th, 2020 were distributed to the City Council on Tuesday, December 29th. It was prepared by Cheryl Hebert, and with no changes or corrections submitted to the clerk, the minutes will be accepted as distributed. We also had a special meeting on January 4th, 2021. The minutes of this meeting were distributed to the City Council on Tuesday, January 5th, 2021 by City Clerk Cheryl Hebert, with no changes or corrections submitted to the clerk. The minutes will be accepted as distributed. We are on number 9 and on our agenda this evening. Seems like we got there pretty quickly, doesn't it? This is the opportunity for citizens to make comments for matters not on the agenda. So if there are any citizens who are joining us online this evening or by phone, now would be the appropriate time for you to comment on matters not on tonight's agenda. And I'll wait for you, Mr. Smith.
Mr. Mayor, none of the attendees have raised their hand.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Moving right along to number 14 on our agenda. This is under the presentations heading. We had a follow-up presentation and discussion with the Timberman, which is actually the Ironman Timberman, which was something we discussed at the last meeting, and still looking at the possibility of hosting this event in August of 2021. So Audra, if you're with us, now would be the appropriate time.
Hi, everybody. How are you? Good evening.
Good evening and welcome. Glad you could join us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. So our last conversation, we talked about, to the mayor's point, the possibility of hosting 70.3 Ironman Timberman the weekend of August 21st through the 22nd. And my goal here is to really highlight everything that the Lakes region has to offer. And again, just revisiting, we would start in Guilford at Elacoya and finish downtown in Laconia and really highlight what the city has to offer. There are a lot of athletes, and including the Ironman staff, were incredibly disappointed when the event went away and would love to see it back. And I know for sure that it would sell out immediately. Currently, all our races are pretty much sold out, at least our full distance ones. So there's a demand for an additional race, and especially in our beautiful area. So with that being said, I just wanted to see if anybody had any questions. I know I sent out my PowerPoint presentation again. That, those numbers and the asks in there is just a guideline. It's basically everything that we can do there. It would be more like a la carte. So those numbers are not hard numbers. So I know if somebody was to look at it, they could get a little, be a little taken back by the amount of hotel rooms or the cash piece and everything like that. And that's not the case. We're able to adjust that accordingly.
Thanks, Audra. And certainly, Councilor Susi, I see your hand up, and please, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Audra, thank you very much. I just have a couple of questions I think might be on a lot of the council's minds, but it says here in your presentation that there's a financial fee that should be expected from the city. Can you expand upon that, please?
It really depends on each market. In some markets, there's been a financial piece of $10,000 up to $1 million. So it really depends on what we can work out. Sometimes we'll do something where there'll be a marketing play. So if we sign up with a title sponsor, and then the city can also sell sponsorships, and that would go back into the city's financials. So really, there's a lot of flexibility. We've had loose conversations, and it seems like this potentially might be more of like an in-kind contract versus, so cash heavy.
Can you please describe more about in-kind?
In-kind would be everything from the venue fees, so O-Pee-Chee, downtown, some parking lots. Then it would also be the school, police, DOT, garbage services, some ambulances, and we would have some, medical services. So that's kind of what we're looking at right now.
How about things like hotel accommodations? You're asking for X amount of rooms for a long period of time. As you know, August is one of our peak seasons here, and we can't, I don't know how we're gonna do complimentary rooms during
Again,
that time of the year.
no, absolutely. And again, that's just a guideline. So in some venues, we've gotten 250 room nights. In other venues, we haven't. So, and I'm completely well aware of that. That's a prime season for us. And that, that probably would not be an ask that's obtainable.
So in
That's
other
something
words,
that would come off the table.
right, what you're saying is that you would expect the city to fund police, fire, medical. I see a thing in here, up to 2,000 volunteers. The schools, the Opeachy area, the downtown area, the streets are closed at complimentary cost.
As much as we can. In going back to the volunteers, we would hire a volunteer director and they would get the volunteers for the event. In some venues, we have, an HVA, and with that HVA, they will supply a volunteer director and pay the volunteer director. That would be part of that person's job. I'm not asking that here because that's definitely not a reasonable ask. So in the past, when we had Timberman, I would hire somebody and they would be responsible for all the volunteers for the event.
And you want a 3-year commitment.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, then I assume there's a contract that we would have to process to go through legal, and there's liability and stuff involved.
Absolutely. So we would work with our legal counsel, and the contract would be with Ironman and the city. And that would have all the terms in the agreement, all the terms in there in the agreement.
Okay, thank you, Audra. Mr. Mayor,
Thank you.
I'm all set. Next.
Thank you, Councilor Cheney. Any follow-up questions, further questions for Audra? Councilor Hamel, yes.
Yes, thank you. Hi, Art, how are you today?
I am good. How are you?
Very good, thank you. I have the similar as Councilor Susie. To tell you the truth, the back pages are pretty scary for a small community like this
Of course.
come up with all these wishes, from bus services to public relations people, parking staff, electricians, dedicated EMS and EMTs, 50 licensed medical professionals, emergency transport needs for general public on the day. With the financial situation of COVID and everything else going on, I just think it'd be really tough for Laconia to be able to come up with this. And to say that, well, all this can be managed and changed or whatever, personally for myself, when it would come time to vote, I would have to see something in black and white, be very specific of what the host city is going to be expected to do, because there's an awful lot here, and a lot of it is a lot of costs to the city, where, like I said, this is going to be a lean budget as it is. And I just can't see how we can come up with all this, with all these items that are being requested.
Absolutely. And which is completely understandable. And the city wouldn't be required to come up with all the things listed. So the next step to this piece is that we are going to put everything in writing of what the asks are. And then I'll send that over to the mayor and to Scott, and then we'll work through that. And then that will be presented to all of you. Again, I live in this area and I used to produce Timberman, so I'm aware of the costs and how this could be. That's a big ask. So that is not, again, those aren't set in stone. That's just a very broad general view of what we've gotten in other markets. But one market is not the same with another market. So again, I know it's really scary and it can be shocking and almost annoying to see that somebody would ask for something like that, especially during these times, but that's not the case. That's just our
Okay,
standard
because-
deck that we send out, and then we start the negotiations.
okay. It's the way it's written. It's kind of like this
Oh,
should
yeah.
be in Boston.
No, trust me, I've had this conversation on a few occasions, so I completely understand. There are some cities where, like a Chattanooga, that's not an issue, and they were one of the larger cash pieces. You know, Maine is a different scenario. Timberman's a different scenario. There's Muncie, Indiana. You know, it's all we can customize it. I just have to go back with a compelling proposal to my bosses, and that's what we're going to work through, because at the end of the day, what I want to do is bring all these people into our beautiful area and really highlight the Lakes region and downtown Laconia, and have the athletes finish up Main Street, go into a Peachy, have a big celebration, have all the have all the merchants outside, the restaurants, heads in beds, and make this a destination race like it was back in the day.
Councilor Susie,
Okay, Bill,
Councilor
thank you
Hamel, go
very
ahead.
much.
Thank you.
Nope, I'm all set. Thank you.
Councilor Susie, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, Audra, just one last question. How does, if we didn't, no investment as far as cash or stuff like that, how does Ironman raise enough money to pay for staff like yourself, or pay prizes and stuff like that? Where does that come from?
Oh, there's a total operations budget. So we put on numerous races throughout the year. So that goes into an operations budget, and that's it. And then it filters into an overhead budget, and that's how they pay for staff. Plus we have sponsorship. You know, there's a lot of different buckets. I'm on currently now my role is the executive director for the Ironman Foundation. So that's a different bucket. So we have a completely separate budget. But with, let's say with Timberman's budget, we would pay police, we would have our expenses, and then we would pay our contracted staff, where a full-time staff comes out of an overhead budget. And this would be more event specific.
Okay, because I don't see how we could have any hotel rooms complimentary.
No.
And we could do food and all that kind of stuff.
Sure, and we don't have to worry about the comped rooms. That's just an ask. And again, in other markets, they're able, like a Chattanooga or Madison, Wisconsin, a place where there's multiple hotels, so it's not an impact on what's already a busy season. So that I completely understand. So again, it's a general guideline, and so I don't want us to get fixated on the numbers. Again, it's a lot, but we can work this out. The main goal is I just want to be in the area and try to offset some costs. And what is that? We don't know yet, but we're going to work towards that goal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Susie. Councilor Cheney, welcome. It's nice to see you.
Thank you. I just want to be sure I understand whatever goes into writing is going to be brought back to the council for approval before we go forward. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Cheney, certainly that is been my understanding right along too. That's a presumption I've been working under, that the from the high view of this, the 30,000-foot view, is that there's a lot of appealing aspects of this race returning to the area. But I think the real work is done really with the specifics and the details of what's contained within the four corners of a contract that Ironman would propose and the city would fully vet to make a determination whether it worked, whether we could afford it, whether it was worthwhile, things like that. So I think we're baby stepping towards perhaps looking at a proposal from Ironman sometime this week that has specifics. And I believe that when we receive that, certainly we want to share it with the council, certainly with the city manager, so we can work through this detail by detail and figure out, and we'll make the ultimate determination. Any other council questions from councilors? Looks like, Audra, right now we're good. So I'll be looking forward to the next communication from Ironman in the middle of the week. And our anticipation is we will dig in over the next 2 weeks and work very hard on it and give it a really fair consideration. With the goal perhaps of being able to give it a thumbs up or thumbs down vote at our next city council meeting. I think
Sounds
you had
great.
talked about wanting to open, if we were to go forward, you wanted to open up registration by February. So
Absolutely.
I'm eternally optimistic that this should give us enough time to fully vet the document and make a determination. So
Sounds
thank you
great.
very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you. And thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Okay, moving along to number 15, which is the mayor's report. I just have a couple of things to talk about. First of all, the Laconia Human Relations Committee has a presentation this Sunday at 3 p.m. It'll be virtual. It'll be noticed on the city website. It is to celebrate the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. Also be commemorating Dr. Martin Luther King Day, which is Monday, the 18th, I believe. The focus of this presentation will be Dr. King's speech in 1963 on the National Mall, and it's the legacy and relevance of it today in 2021. Should be all are welcome, and all are asked to attend and participate, and I'm looking forward to it personally. So following that, on Wednesday the 20th at 5 p.m., we'll have a continuation of the discussion that we started on December 23rd with the Laconia Daily Sun, and sponsoring a panel discussion with community people on the panel, talking about prejudice and tolerance and improving civic discourse in our communities. So that would be on Wednesday, January 20th from 5 to 6:30 p.m. Again, that'll be virtual as well on Zoom. So we're looking forward to another vibrant discussion about those important issues. And finally, and on somewhat of a sad note, I think many of us were perhaps surprised and saddened to see about the passing of Jack Irwin on January 1st. Age 90, by all accounts, he died very peacefully at his home. And of course, Jack is known as not only one of the great businessmen of not only the Lakes region, but certainly the state of New Hampshire, a great storyteller and previous Citizen of the Year for the city of Laconia. So he was a native of Laconia. He was one of 3 children. And certainly his legacy and his storytelling and his presence at places like Hector's and the Water Street Cafe is missed sorely. I didn't know him all that well, but I always, when I spoke with him, he was always a gentleman. He was always somewhat entertaining with his stories, and certainly very proud of his affiliation with Boston College football, Laconia High School football, and his affiliation with the United States Marine Corps as well. So I just wanted to send the condolences on behalf of myself and I believe the whole city council to the Irwin family on the passing of the legendary Jack Irwin. So moving on now, I'd go to item number 16, which are the council comments. As you can see, we've moved it up this week. Thank you very much. And this would be an opportunity for city councilors, if they have comments to make, now would be the appropriate time. Councilor Hamel, all right, okay, good. I hope we weren't going to get shut out the first week we moved it up in the agenda. Thank you.
I'll take it back then. No, just a little bit of, I would like to ask Scott not at this meeting, but a future meeting, if he could come up with some kind of analysis for the whole council on COVID. What are our COVID costs in the different departments, and also what has the state or federal government sent to the city to help offset that. I've asked this before and kind of got somewhat of an answer, but I would really like to have I don't know how detailed you could do that, Scott, but I'd like to have some kind of accounting on our expenses and costs received for those expenses, if you could please.
Yep, we'd be happy to do that.
Okay, thank you, Scott. That's all I have.
Looking across the board, I don't see any requests for council comments this evening. So we'll move right along to number 17, which is the committee reports. Do we have any reports from the committees? Seeing none. Liaison reports. Councilor Hamel, can you give us an update on the theater?
I will be glad to. The theater is going very well. I think, as you can see, it's not open in December, and that's because of some COVID problems with getting materials. I am pleased to say that the windows should be in by the end of this week or middle of the week, and as soon as those arrive on site, they will immediately be installed. Probably take close to 2 weeks to get all those installed. Finish work is being done inside now. A lot of the moldings and things like that are all being done. Evergreen is back on site doing a lot of the plaster detail of the moldings and stuff in the concession area and other places around the theater. They're kind of finishing up. I think I mentioned before, the seats are all here now. We're waiting to paint the different levels where the seats are going to go, carpeting, and then the seats will start to be installed. They've started installing a lot of the brackets that are going to hold the lights for the theatrical lights and speakers and that there. So those are being installed also. Electrical is going really well. And if you looked at last Friday's Laconia publication, I put pictures in there of the marquee that is being rebuilt. That's coming along good. I'm anxious every week to see what they have done on it. So it's coming along. So obviously it can't be installed anyway because of the staging out front, but they are proceeding with that. So other than that, that's about it for the Colonial right now.
Thank you, Councilor Hamel.
You're welcome.
Any other liaison reports? Councilor Haynes, is that you?
Yes, thank you,
Welcome.
Mr. Mayor. As far as the historic district, we've had 2 meetings and we're still organizing, but it's very interesting conversations. So they're doing well. As far as the Heritage Commission, I will save my comments because we have an item under new business.
Thank you, Councilor Haynes.
Thank you.
Any other liaison reports? Seeing none, moving on to number 19 on our agenda this evening. Oh, did you have something, Councilor Hamel?
Yeah, real quick, I would have a problem if I didn't say that also we are still accepting donations for the theater. We're always accepting that. So I wanted to bring that up also. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad you got that in. Moving right along here to number 19 on our agenda, which is the citizens' request to comment on current agenda items. Any items on tonight's agenda that the public is tuned in and would like to comment, now would be the appropriate time, and I'll wait on your cue, Mr. Smith.
Mr. Mayor, Charlie St. Clair has raised his hand.
Welcome, Mr. St. Clair. I hope you're doing well. Happy New Year.
Same to all of you, of course. Thank you. A couple things. You're going to be talking about the Heritage Commission tonight. And I really, really hope that the council approves the 60-day window before any decisions are made. I've had a lot of conversations with people about this, and I'm sure a lot of the councilors have. I don't understand why a permit should be issued for the demolition of that building where no plans have been put forward as to what's going to be done there. Now, some people will say, well, who cares? It's none of our business. But the reality is that it is everybody's business to have a vacant lot right there on Lakeside Avenue for who knows how many years. I just don't think it's right. But if nothing else, we should give the Heritage Commission those 60 days to see if something else can be done or worked out. And I really hope all of you support that. The other thing is that I was not aware that you guys had something on the agenda until just tonight, so I couldn't call anybody about the speed limit on Weirs Boulevard. I understand there's a agenda item where somebody wants to lower it to 30 miles an hour back from where that starts now, up by the Nazwa, further back towards, I guess, by the ice cream stand there or something. But again, it's one thing in the summertime. I guess somebody could make an argument for that. But I want to remind everybody, not that you need to be reminded, but the majority of the time of year up there, it's pretty quiet, especially this time of year. And to impose a 30-mile-an-hour limit even further back towards the city proper, I think is unreasonable for most of us to drive that stretch a lot. That's just my feeling on that. And I thank you all for listening. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. St. Clair.
Mr. Mayor, no other attendees have raised their hand.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Moving along to number 20, the city manager's report, and I'll turn it over to Scott Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You do have included in your packet this evening the financial and operational trends report. Before I get to that, with the 3 agenda items you have coming up, I just want you to know staff is available as a resource if needed. So Wes Anderson, Dean Trefethen, and Amy Levisik are all on board tonight if anybody has any questions on upcoming items. So going to the financial and operational trends report, starting at the top of the first page of the report, you can see we continue to have strong numbers year over year or even over the 2-year number for building permit value. So we're just over 30 million a year ago, and 2 years ago, we were roughly at 13 million and 14 million respectively. And there still are a couple of large projects that have begun some demolition that are not included in that number yet. So depending on the timing, even though we are in a slower time of year for building permits, and the clock will run up until March 31st for the assessing year before we turn over a new assessing year starting April 1st, there still is some time for that number to go up. Both the fire and rescue calls on this page and the police calls on the next page continue to be strong. Both departments are busy on a number of fronts. You can see a little bit of an uptick in the welfare number on the bottom of the first page. A little bit of carryover, into January, but nothing large at this point. We think some of the continuation or the extensions of some of the programs, particularly on the federal level, and then an additional round of stimulus dollars coming out recently and some more checks being received by people have helped for that. So we will continue to monitor the welfare as some of these programs unwind, if you will. Property tax collection, bills were due toward the end of December this year. That date always fluctuates a little bit depending on when we get our tax rate set, when the bills get in the mail, and they're due 30 days after that. But you can look at the last 7 years of data, including this year, and see that we're at a very strong position for the collection due date. We always have a certain number, a very small percentage of people who pay after the first of the year. It might be for tax reasons or other strategies they may be doing in their personal life. So typically by the time we see the numbers again at the end of January, there's a little bump up from where they were at the end of December. So we're pleased to see that going on strong. Motor vehicle registration, we are halfway through the year, so 6 months are in the books, if you will. And we are running at 51.5% roughly. And that is on a higher revenue amount this year. We did increase the revenue projections over last year's number by 65,000, and you can see that we are running ahead of pace a little bit. So that continues to show strength in the economy and in new cars in particular. You'll see the overtime report. Some of this again is COVID related, reimbursable. We'll break some details out and have that per Councilor Hamill's request for you at the meeting in 2 weeks. So I do understand that some of these numbers, are higher. We've had situations where we've had, people out early on. A close contact might impact several folks of a police department, might impact several firefighters working out of one particular station that all of a sudden need to go into quarantine because of close contacts. We haven't had any of those large type of events recently, and we'll continue to have very tight protocols on how all of our staff interact with each other in the building, not only performing, work-related duties, but simple things as far as even, where they have lunch in the break room and how many people are there at one time and those types of things. So we continue to be very cognizant of the concerns, even though, the vaccine is starting to roll out. It's going to take a long time for everybody who wants to get the vaccine to get the vaccine. Even once you get it, you still need the second dose. And even after that, it's not 100% certainty. So the separation, the appropriate equipment, the face masks, staying in small groups and just within your core family are all going to be with us for a while. We are stressing that in every building. And we are starting to put together some numbers that I'll also have for you at the next meeting regarding some of our interactions with the public in doing things like paying tax bills and motor vehicle registrations and, through some of our requests, how much of that is occurring online and that people are taking advantage of to help limit that. So, we think right now just on property taxes, which we've tallied, we've seen about a 20% increase in people who used an online provision. Others used the drop box outside. When we had the greeter in the lobby, some people only came in as far as the greeter and handed off a tax payment and then left the building. So we certainly appreciate the public taking advantage of some of these electronic or other means available to them. We've continued to remain open to the public again since we have been on the Tuesday post Memorial Day. There are some town halls, usually in smaller communities right now, that are still not open to the public or open by appointment only. So I give a lot of credit to our staff, but also to our residents for really being smart, being safe when they come to the building. We've had no issues with people refusing to wear masks or being belligerent in any sense of the word. So people are really kind of toeing the line, and we as staff in City Hall and all of our city buildings really appreciate the cooperation and the support from the community. Moving on in the report, you can see the impact fees. They continue to trickle in a little bit on the bottom of page 4 of the report year over year. So revenue to date is a little over 14,000, broken down by various departments. Turning to page 5, don't believe there are any changes in any of the trust balances or the TIF balances. We do not have the EMS report this month just from the timing of the New Year's holiday and generated the report. It wasn't available when we went to publication on this agenda last Thursday, so I don't have that for you. You can see the boat taxes are running slightly ahead or basically on par with the pace from last year, but we are projecting $10,000 in additional revenue over last year's budgeted amount. As I do starting January 1st, we encourage all residents and all folks locally in the region to register your boats here at City Hall as opposed to doing it through the state. A lion's share of the money stays here in the city if you register your boat either through City Hall or one of our registered boat dealers, which I believe we have 6 or 7 of around the city. So really a big incentive if you're a local boater and you'd like your dollars to stay locally. We encourage people to do local boat registrations. And the last page contains our winter maintenance storms. Obviously, we had the one very large blizzard that occurred on the 17th, and then there were multiple days of cleanup, which I spoke about at our last regular meeting, and the crew did a really great job, not only with a storm that was coming down fast and furious, but in doing the removal of snow very rapidly in the downtown in the following days. So really, other than the blizzard, we had a few minor snow icing type of events, and you can see the cost there. So not Not a big hit so far, knock on wood, to the snow budget, and we're in decent shape for being almost midway through January. So I will stop there and take any questions that anyone may have on this or anything else.
Counselor Hamel.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Scott, for the report. On that report, as far as COVID and the COVID costs and what we've been gotten back, could you also incorporate, if possible, the situation up at the state school, what that's costing us, and what we've been paid back on that, and also the if a person there comes down with COVID at that facility, where are they transported to? Because I've heard, several tones to go there over the past month or two, and just curious where they are taken. Because supposedly they were going to be taken back to their host city, but I don't know that. So if you could do that at the next meeting or something, when you could, that'd be appreciated.
Well, I can get you some specifics, but I'd like to just maybe comment on a couple of things there so that information is straight tonight. So our staffing with a police officer up there is not costing us anything at the end of the day. We are getting full 100% reimbursement for the cost of an officer, of a cruiser, full benefits, everything. So while we may front the money in a payroll check and get reimbursed, there is zero cost to the city for anything that we're doing up at the state school property. The only people who are coming to that facility are being referred by some sort of a medical professional for either for being homeless and having COVID symptoms, or a close contact where they need to be isolated. No one is going there on walk-in. No one is going there without that referral. I don't listen to a scanner, but the only time we would be toned there for a transport of some sort is if there were an existing COVID positive patient already at the facility who may be deteriorated to a point where they needed additional medical care. So under that scenario, I'm assuming they would be transported to the appropriate medical facility, which could be local or it could be somewhere else. I don't have those details. Once somebody who is staying at the facility at the Doobie Building is cleared, has either gone the requisite number of days past being symptomatic and no longer test positive, or turned out not to be positive in the first place from their close contact, they are 100% returned to the community that they came from, and there has never been an exception to that. And I can tell you that standing here today. So I just wanted to be very clear that everybody who comes there is being returned to a home community, with the rare exception of if somebody did need additional medical attention and we needed to respond, then they would go to an appropriate facility.
Okay, so if there is an EMS call there and they're transported to wherever, are we reimbursed for that also?
I would believe so. I mean, the state is reimbursing us for everything. I will specifically double check and ask that question, but I would assume if we are transporting a person at the state's request, that the state would be responsible for reimbursing us for that cost.
Okay, I'd appreciate it if you looked into that. Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilor Hamel. Any other follow-up questions of the city manager in regards to the financial and operational trends report? Okay, seeing none, I'd like to move on to number 21, which is new business. And under 21A, we have a staff report in front of us this evening, which is a request to lower the speed limit on Weirs Boulevard near 937 Weirs Boulevard. Councilor Felch received a request from a representative of the St. Moritz Condominium Association at 937 Weirs Boulevard to lower the speed limit in front of their property from 35 miles per hour to 30 miles an hour. Weirs Boulevard speed limit is 35 miles per hour from the intersection of White Oaks Road to a point approximately 423 feet north of the north boundary of 937 Weirs Boulevard, where then the speed limit reduces to 30 miles per hour. The report in front of you is obviously been thorough, and it's been prepared by Wes Anderson. It's estimated that the cost associated with lowering this speed limit would be approximately $200. The cost of the signs will come from the Public Works regulatory sign budget. We do have a map, and is Wes with us this evening to maybe just give us a brief oversight on this, Scott?
He is, and maybe I can just jump in for a second. I know this particular property owner had reached out not only to his counselor, he reached out to the Colonia Police Department, and I know Chief Canfield responded to him. They did put out the electronic radar signboard out there in tracks and did that type of stuff. This particular gentleman said, that worked for a bit, but when the sign goes away, the problem comes back type of thing. So we have had multiple contacts with him and worked with him. I'm not sure if Council Felch would like to speak to it first, but yes, certainly, because he initiated this on behalf of this constituent, but certainly Wes Anderson is available as well.
Councilor Felch, go right ahead.
So yes, I met with the constituent. The area where it's at, the speed limit goes down to 30 miles an hour after the corner. All we want to do is move it back before the corner, so it's a really short distance. Plus, you have a lot of traffic going in and out of the ice cream place right there during the summer, plus St. Moritz itself, which is right around that corner. I also met with Wes and with the chief, and they both agree that it's a good idea to push that back to that area. So.
Thank you. Perhaps it's Wes or perhaps it's you, Scott. Can you give us the analysis or the data supplied through the remote speed reader that was put down there? Or is there some sort of report that prints out to see what the average speed was at various times a day?
Yeah, there would be. I was not involved in this conversation that Councilor Felch just referenced, but maybe Wes can summarize if indeed the chief had shared that kind of anecdotal data or real data, I guess.
The chief didn't show me or talk to about the recordings that came from that speed sign. I was looking at it strictly from the sight distance and speed in that area. So we would have to talk with Chief Canfield to get more detail on that piece.
Well, I guess I'd have to perhaps agree with Charlie St. Clair in regards to the volume of traffic there in the off season compared to the seasons where there's more traffic there, particularly tourist traffic. I can certainly see that people are crossing and looking for a lower speed limit there. And you've got people on the side of the road. Sometimes there's not much of a shoulder in that area, or if you're crossing to get to the lakeside or from the lakeside back to where you're staying. But I'm wondering, I too am wondering about the off season. Do we really need to go down to 30 miles an hour, or is this more of a seasonal approach to traffic and the speed limit in that area? Do we do any seasonal traffic limits, Scott, in the city where they maybe go up, maybe the speed limit goes down during the height of tourist season?
I'm not aware we do any change in speed limits. Sometimes that might be more confusing than not, that if someone goes through and is used to it being one speed and then all of a sudden it's another speed. And again, this was driven by a resident request. This wasn't specifically staff driven. It wasn't that either Public Works or the police saw, numerous close calls or had been called there for numerous calls of accidents. This is, certainly one resident as part of a condominium association who's seeing what he's seeing. And he took the approach to contact several of us, including Councilor Felch.
Well, I'm not sure what the council is inclined to do on this tonight. I certainly can appreciate the challenges of crossing a busy road, particularly in the height of a busy season. On the other hand, I'm not quite sure, or I'd be interested in feedback from the council, whether we've got enough data here to help us make a decision. Some data I'd be looking for is volume, perhaps an analysis of the speed at various times a day, just something to give us a little more information, a little more data to make an informed decision. Councilor Haynes.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. May I ask Counselor Cheney if that's enforceable? I don't want to put you on the spot, but
No,
you have experience with that.
it is enforceable, but the truth of the matter is the difference of 5 miles an hour is not going to be significant. I tend to agree with the mayor that in the off season, it's difficult to understand why we want to worry about a 5 mile an hour change. Once the signs are made, they can go up and down relatively easily. It would be my request, Mr. Mayor, that we ask the police chief to provide us with some data about the record speeds there. Let's find out what's real. To suggest we're going to enforce it is pie in the sky as far as I'm concerned. It's not easy to do in an area like that. But before we make a change, I'd like to see the data. I think that would help a whole lot. Thank you.
Thank you, councilors. So I think it might be about time on this, maybe to a motion to table might be in order, and make a request, Scott, if we could, from Chief Canfield for some additional data on this. Would anyone like to make a motion to table? So
Yes,
made
I
by
would.
Councilor Hamel, seconded by Councilor Haynes. Motions to table are not subject to discussion. Henry, are you okay? All right, there we are. Okay. I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative. This matter is tabled, and the request will go into the chief of police for some additional information on some data on this. Thank you, councilors. Moving along to number 21B. Which is the Heritage Commission petitions for an additional 60-day time period to negotiate with the owners of 76 Lakeside Avenue, proposing a demolition. This is a request under 119-E-5- a. The Heritage Commission has negotiated with the owners of the property, but have not reached an agreeable resolution. It is desired by the commission to continue negotiations, but need to petition the city council for an additional 60-day time period in order to continue negotiations. If Dean, you're with us, I want to maybe just give us a brief oversight on this.
I sure can.
Thank you.
Under the ordinance, the Heritage Commission has followed the ordinance to its letter concerning this application up until this point. And the owners, the applicant, have not come to any agreement with the Heritage Commission so far. But the time limits that are prescribed under the ordinance are about to expire, and that's why they wanted to ask for the additional 60 days so that they would have more time to work with the owners and the applicant.
Okay, thank you, Dean. I appreciate a little oversight on this. I guess I'd propose a motion right now, and at least move it to a discussion period if necessary. The motion would be to authorize the Heritage Commission an additional 60 days to negotiate with the owners of 76 Lakeside Avenue with the intention of avoiding demolition of the building. Is there a motion? Councilor Felch makes the motion, seconded by Councilor Littman. Further discussion on this matter? Councilor Susie.
Councilor Haynes, I guess you're part of the Heritage Commission. I have a question for you. Is there any movement from do you think there is a chance of an agreement, or has there just been no conversation?
The only thing I can tell you is that there's been a discussion about moving the building to another site. I deliberately went up there Sunday again and got out of my vehicle and looked at it. I'm not an engineer. I don't know how you could possibly do that. My biggest concern is, and I asked the council to please allow them the 60 days. My biggest concern is that is just going to leave an empty lot. And that building, if you stand there and look down Lakeside Avenue, that building is part of the skyline. And I would hate to see just, a few buildings and then just an empty lot. And I think the biggest concern is, and Charlie St. Clair mentioned it, there are no plans. So it's the owner represented that it was for future development. Well, how long is the future? Is that the next 20 years? And we're going to just look at an empty vacant lot. So I ask and plead with the council to allow them the 60 days to see what we can do.
Are we bound by, I'm sorry, are we bound by the 60 days or can we say longer?
Dean would have to answer that question, Bob.
The ordinance calls for an additional 60 days. If there's no agreement made at the end of that 60 days, my interpretation of the ordinance would be that at that point in time, I would have to issue a demolition permit.
So, and the owner is aware of this, so he could just wait it out.
Mr. Mayor?
Oh, yes, sorry, I was looking down at the document. Yeah, go right ahead, Councilor Haynes.
To answer your question, Bob, yes. It's and this is many times the Heritage Commission has dealt with this. And the applicants know that they just have to play the game and they're going to get what they want anyways.
It's too bad because I agree with you. We're slowly, that whole skyline, that whole strip is losing its history. And I don't like it, but what can you do? Okay. Thank you, Councilor Haynes.
Councilor Hamel.
Councilor Haynes, do you know if, or even Dean, are these local people or out of state? Do you know? Just curious.
The person that I've been dealing with most is in-state. They're not local, but they're in-state. The family owns 2 or 3 other properties adjacent to this property. So they have a going business right at the corner of Lakeside and Endicott North. And they have a couple other pieces of vacant land, and they have recently bought the what was most recently the Pharaoh's restaurant property. So they control, a significant portion of that section of Weirs Beach. And I would echo what Councilor Haynes said. There's no concrete plans. They say they have a plan, but it's more of a plan that's in their head as opposed to something that's on paper that we can look at or, analyze. So I don't know what that means exactly. And we have to kind of take what they say at face value and interpret it the way that we need to interpret it, I think.
Yeah, so if they have no plans for what's been said several years, do you suppose that is being thought of as a vendor space for several years?
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
Do you think, since they have no plans for that area, do you think then that would end up being a vendor space?
Oh, I don't know. I don't have a read on how quick that they would have a plan. It could be the kind of thing that they truly do have a plan and it will be presented, relatively shortly, 3 to 6 months. But it also could be that they have a plan, but there's no timetable. So yeah, it's possible it could be a vendor spot, but it's speculation at this point in time.
Yeah, I agree. Okay.
I think thanks, Councilor Hamel. I think what concerns me is that look at the sizable investment made on that avenue over the years by the city. The extent of the work done has certainly dressed up that area significantly. It's particularly appealing to the eye. It's cleaner, it's nicer, the lighting is better, the road is better, the boardwalk is better. You know, the idea of an empty lot or something that's paved over, it doesn't exactly. I don't really think about when I think about the future of Weirs Beach. It's with some more development that is appealing to the eye, consistent with the area. I'm sorry if their intention at some point is just to demolish the house and leave it as an empty lot. I don't think that does anything for the quality of life in our city or the quality of the area on Weirs Beach. Councilor Susie.
Have we heard anything from the Weirs Beach Association?
I have not.
There have been one or two members of the action committee that participated in the public hearing at the Heritage Commission level. They voiced their displeasure with the prospect.
Yeah, unfortunately, it seems to me, unless we think of another way here, putting it off for another 60 days, maybe the owners negotiate in good faith, we're able to do something here that we are all satisfied with, or we maybe just be putting off the inevitable. But I certainly, seems like putting it off or getting a 60-day extension certainly seems like the wise thing to do to see if there are any alternatives. If there's no further requests for discussion at this point, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes and the 60-day extension is.
Counselor
approved.
Hamel votes yes. I vote yes.
Did I skip you? I apologize, Counselor Hamel.
You did.
I assume that you did. I gave you the credit for the vote anyway.
So easy to miss.
Okay, moving right along to number 21C, which is a request to authorize the formation of a Weirs Community Park Committee and set up a special revenue fund for said committee. I believe we have Amy Lovisek with us this evening, and of course we still have Scott Myers. If one of you or both of you would like to give us a little oversight on this, or an overview, excuse me, that'd be appreciated.
I will defer to Amy to take the lead on this tonight.
Hi, Amy, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Welcome. I'm glad you could join us, and thanks for your help on this.
Of course. Thank you for having me. Basically, what we're looking to do is we're looking to make the Weirs Community Park Association a city committee, which is exactly what we did with Levitt Park House Association and the Tardif Park House Association. We made those into committees in 2004. We're looking to do the exact same thing with the Weirs Community Park House. So what we're looking to do is take the money that they currently have in their bank account. They would no longer be an association through this Secretary of State, and they would be under the city's umbrella for insurance purposes and accounting. They would have a special revenue fund for this and use the money that they are going to be gifting the city for that purpose. And that money would be solely used for anything at the park house, maintenance, special event programming, that type of thing. And then also for the park itself for any capital improvements they wish to make.
Thanks, Amy. So how does the Weirs Community Park Committee derive income right now?
Through park house rentals. They also do some a fundraiser during Motorcycle Week, and they do a parking They charge for parking basically at their facility. So that's mostly how they do it. If they do any other fundraising, I'm not positive of those.
And approximately how much would they be gifting the city to seed this account?
Approximately 47,000.
Since we have 4 motions that are proposed here, probably now would be the time. If councilors have a question or further discussion, now might be the time to do it. That way we can perhaps roll through the motions a little faster. Councilor Hamel, I see you're off of mute. Do you have a question?
No, I don't have a question. I just have a comment. I think that group of Weirs for an awful long time has been an outstanding group for the community up there. And they spent a lot of money on the park behind it. And I believe I don't know, maybe Amy could say, but I think they also contributed to the new back entrance of that. And they're a great bunch of people up there that work hard for that community.
They did, in fact, go in half with the city to put in that walkway. That's gorgeous back there. Perfect.
Thank you, Councilor Hamel. Any other questions or comments? Councilor Lippman, yes.
Could Amy explain how the allocation of funds would be different under this structure versus the existing one? In other words, how can the money be spent under this structure versus the one that's in place? What would be different?
So right now they are an association and they have their own bank accounts. So they have their checkbooks and can write a check to whatever they wish. At that, the change would be that the city is their bank basically, and that we have their money in our system and they have to go through our processes, our purchasing processes, that type of a thing. That's the change that will be coming through to them, but no other change. They're going to be using the money as they normally do for any capital improvements. Like I had mentioned, an Easter egg hunt that they want to do, but that's the same that the other park houses do as well.
And additionally, Councilor Lippman, right now they need to do their filings with the Secretary of State's office and go that path as a nonprofit. I'm not sure if that's what's wearing on them in a bit, and they'd rather fold that and come under the city umbrella for a little bit of streamlining. As part of this process, we would also require them to establish bylaws that the other park houses associations have, so that they have fiduciary duties and common man duties as to how the money is spent for the betterment of both the Weirs Community Center and the park area that they oversee. So those structures would be in place, and then the true oversight would fall with the Parks Commission to verify and look at maybe quarterly financials that the city produces and those types of things, just as a checks and balance in place and best practices.
Do we know, is there any nonprofit charitable trust issues that come into play here? In terms of
I'm not aware of any, but we'll certainly double check that before we do this transaction.
Yeah, I'm just from a technical standpoint, not a concern standpoint, if you will, that
sure
the transaction be compliant.
Yeah, I think the ones that happened in 2004 were obviously before my time and before Amy's time in her particular role right now, but we can double check that. Good question.
Thank you, Councilor Lippman. Good question, good insight. Councilor Felch.
Yes, I'm actually the president at Levitt Park Association, Levitt Park Community Volunteers, actually. And the system, I think, works great. Everything, any bills we have go through the finance department at the city. Any money we need to spend on something, we have to request it from the city. So I think the checks and balances are great there. We've donated money for the playgrounds. We donated money for the tennis courts. Plus, we run all the park rentals versus having the Parks and Rec do it. Hopefully they can keep a committee there. I know they've had a hard time with Towers Park, but I think the system works really good. So,
thank you, Councilor Felch. Councilor Hamel.
Yes, just a little background. I mean, I was on the park commission for 9 years in the 80s, and when most of the parks were up and running. And I guess you could say, depending on how the succession of the different people, the presidents and that there, where they keep all their accounts, within the park and that there, I think this is a much better system. I think it's been tested with with Levitt Park and Tarter Park that's been on it for an awful long time now. And I don't think there was any any problems with them converting over to this whatsoever. So I think it's a good idea, but I think it's also good that, Scott, look into it as Henry asked. But I think with what happened with Levitt and Tardif, I think there's a good background there.
Yeah.
Thank you, Counselor Hamel. Any other comments or questions in regards to this request? Okay, seeing none right now, we have a series of 4 motions. The first one, I'd be looking for a move to authorize the establishment of the Weirs Community Park House Committee as proposed. So made by Counselor Felch, seconded by Counselor Cheney. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call. Oh, sorry, Counselor Littman, yes.
I guess, subject to the manager confirming there's no technical issue here.
I would suggest that would apply to all the motions then.
Okay.
Yes, that'd be great. Thank you. Good pickup. Seeing no further discussion on this, except I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. I'll be looking for a second motion, and that would be a move to waive a reading of Resolution 2021-01 in its entirety and to read by title only. So made by Counselor Cheney. Seconded by Counselor Felch. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
Henry, you okay?
I'm having a problem tonight. Not balancing.
Are you balancing your computer on your knee?
No, it's my phone on something that's not holding it up as it usually does.
Apparently. 6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Moving along to
Full entertainment tonight for the crowd.
Yeah.
I'd be looking to move a motion to move a first reading relative to the establishment of a Weirs Community Park House Special Revenue Fund, certainly subject to the due diligence completed by the city manager. So made by Counselor Felch, seconded by Counselor Susie. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
You're muted.
Bruce, you mute.
He's frozen.
No, he's moving.
There he goes.
Bruce, you mute. Yep, you mute.
Now you're frozen.
I'll come back to him.
Trying.
You hear?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
Sounds like 5.5 votes in the affirmative. We'll give it 6. 6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Moving along to the last motion on this matter, we're looking for a move to schedule a public hearing on January 25th, 2021 during the regular city council meeting to gather public input prior to adoption. So made by Counselor Felch, seconded by Counselor Susie. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. Okay. Moving along to number 21D, which would be the annual review and discussion of the city manager's performance over the last year, as well as compensation. So part of my duties as mayor, I've had discussions with each of the city councilors, as well as sat down and had a discussion with the city manager today. And all city councilors, go ahead, did I hear someone's voice? No. All city councilors offered some feedback in regards to city manager's job performance over the past year. I will say that to a person and consistently across the board, the job reviews from the city councilors of the city manager were very good to excellent. Some of the words used to describe our city manager's performance were knowledgeable, professional, always willing to help, well-versed in the RSAs and the city charter and ordinances, thankfully steering us out of some piles of things we shouldn't be stepping in. And I think that I'm not surprised to have heard that type of review for our city manager. Certainly I know when I let people throughout the state know where I'm from and perhaps my role in the city. Quite often I'll hear comments from people who live far and wide across the state. They're familiar with Scott Meyer's reputation and indicating that they know him or they've worked with him and how fortunate we are to have him. And I certainly second that as well. I think it only takes a short time working with Scott to realize that whether it's a Monday or a Sunday or a Saturday, whether it's the height of summer and he's at Bartlett Beach, or it's Laconia Motorcycle Week and he's down on the boulevard, and he's present and he's knowledgeable and he's approachable, Scott tends to be on duty and on call 7 days a week. And I think we can all appreciate that. I think one of his critical jobs and responsibilities is certainly to build strong teams underneath him, department teams, that is. And certainly I think we only need to look back at this past year, 2020, and realize where we started a year ago, having no idea what we were going to go through in regards to a pandemic and to a significant economic downturn, what's gone on in our schools and how we've had to transition to remote learning. And realize that the teams that are accountable to Scott and work on behalf of the residents of the city are truly outstanding. They have been nimble and adaptive, working during the most unusual times and particularly the most stressful of times. I think we also realize that that must be a particularly stressful position that they continued to work through during the course of this past year. And I think the leader of the city as a city manager sort of sets the tone, maintains morale, keeps people focused, keeps people fulfilling their responsibilities to residents. And I think that reflects really, really well on the city manager and his leadership. I am really pleased to have him, and I know we all are, to have him on board and in our city. So it doesn't mean there aren't areas of opportunity. There are always ways for us as our city and our city government to improve. And certainly we'll be focused on that in the year to come. And those few concerns that people did have or looking at areas of opportunity are reviewed with the city manager, and I believe that we're all on the same page. I'm happy at this point, before I go into compensation, if there are, certainly it might be an opportunity for other counselors to weigh in briefly, if you see the need to at this point in regards to city manager. So I will move right along into the discussion of compensation. I had an opportunity to dive into the contract that the city manager signed in 2011. I saw where he started. I also looked at a number of variables within that contract, and certainly they strike me as we get a lot of value for the dollar. And he has been, in my estimation, very reasonable in his contract requests and our discussions going forward. So I would like to recommend to this body this evening that, and this is something Scott and I discussed today, and we realize that this will be a very challenging year going forward when it comes to the budget. We will be, as we know, in the midst of some contract negotiations. We will be watching very closely the state budget and how that affects local aid and what that allows us to do going forward. And in recognition of that challenge, the city manager has indicated that there'd be no reason for any pay increase to be anything different than the consumer price index, which is what we've been using to help us budget within the city. Going forward, it looks like it'll be 1.2%. So I think his willingness to accept a pay increase of 1.2%, I think serves the city well, and also shows the type of person that we have in this position. I would also, in conjunction with that, make a recommendation that we increase the city's contribution to his retirement program an additional 1%. And I think that takes us from 13 to 14%, if I'm not mistaken. So that would be my recommendation, my feedback. Scott, again, I appreciate the work that you do in the city. We're very fortunate to have you. I hope you continue to stay with us for the foreseeable future. And I would like, if there's further discussion about the compensation, certainly now may be the appropriate time, but I certainly would perhaps make a motion that we increase the pay accordingly. One more thing as well to add into that contract. This was not the year to take all of one's vacation time, and certainly the city manager realizes that there is a limit as to how many days he can carry over, which I think it's a limit of maximum of 10 days carried over for 6 months. I'm hoping that we might consider allowing him a little discretion as we move into the next contract, that if he's got to carry over days and he needs to carry them over for just a little bit longer, that we would be willing to accommodate him, certainly in light of the effort everyone in the city has been putting in this past year. Perhaps a little flexibility in that regard would be appreciated. So I realize I threw a lot at you right there. Councilor Hamel.
Yes, I'd like to echo, pretty much everything you said, Mayor, about our city manager. I agree with you on pretty much everything. He is very approachable and very knowledgeable. And, I think way back when we picked him, we picked a good choice. I agree with the raise. I think that's commendable for Scott to be the leader in this, to take the CPI percentage. And I don't have a problem with the pension percentage either. I do appreciate everything he does. And like you say, he's something's happening, he's usually there. So I don't disagree with anything.
I'd like to make the motion. That we
Thank
accept
you.
recommendations.
Thank you, Councilor Susi. Is there a second? Councilor Haynes makes the second on this motion. Let me just clarify the motion one more time, make sure we're all on the same page. This is to adjust City managers pay by 1.2%, an increase of 1.2%, consistent with the consumer price index. An additional 1% into a city contribution into his retirement plan, and offering him some flexibility and discretion in the use of carryover vacation, personal, bereavement, and sick leave. I would ask the manager if you would just keep us the city council informed as to how those days are used, just so we know going forward, if that's okay.
I'd be happy to. Thank you.
Yes. Any further discussion? Yes, Councilor Littman.
I have a question for Mr. Myers with respect to the flexibility around the leave time. Is that something you think you should develop with Paula Blumel, the HR person, or as the manager, as the mayor laid it out, the way it should go?
Yeah, we'll put it in writing where we're tracking it, and then kind of put a tracking device on the use days. And, I'm certainly not looking to be unreasonable with the length of time. I know the intent when I started here in 2011 was to not be able to bank a whole lot of days, and coming from the private sector, I fully understand that and continue to believe in that. Like I think the mayor said, this year I cut short a trip, to Mexico. I kind of joke about it. We went to Mexico for a long weekend as opposed to 10 days. And, just with the busyness and so much going on, it was just, it made sense to stay close to the office throughout this year. And again, I can't stress enough what a great team we have that supported the city throughout this whole thing. So it certainly would be a very short window, but yes, I'll structure something with Paula, have the mayor sign off on it, and that way we'll have a written record of it.
Thank you.
Seeing no request for further discussion, I would ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
That's 6 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. Congratulations, Scott. Great to have you on board for another year, and thank you, councilors.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councilors. I appreciate the support and look forward to our continued working relationship for years to come. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that leaves nothing else on our active agenda this evening. We will be, council members, entering into a non-meeting to discuss strategy in regards to collective bargaining. So all of you have the link, should have the link to the next Zoom meeting. So we'll close out of this meeting and move into the next non-meeting. So I'd like to declare the city council meeting of December, excuse me, I see you waving, Councilor Susie. Did you want to speak?
I'm saying
Or are you just
goodbye.
waving to me? Oh, hi, okay. I'd like to declare the city council meeting of January